Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this week I'm delighted to be joined by Jeanette Findlay. Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind, Jeanette. It's been a wee while since you were last on the show. We were talking about Angora Moore, the campaign to build a statue. I mean, incredible achievement.
Oh, listen, that was, apart from the obvious family things, that was one of the best days of my life, to see that unveiled. And obviously, COVID and everything delayed the unveiling, but it was absolutely fantastic. And I can't drive up and down Abercrombie Street without looking at it with some pride, so I know it was fantastic. And the fact that we were able to do that on our own, as a community, no help for anybody. In fact, quite a lot of obstruction, but between us all we did it, and it was absolutely fantastic.
It was a great achievement. I remember speaking to yourself, and then we had a band called Bull of Vogue on, and they had done the charity song, and it's great, like you say, to go past that and think the amount of work that went into it. But the reason I open up with that, Jeanette, is I just think that when Celtic fans put their mind to something, they do achieve. And obviously there's been a lot of different changes in the last wee while, and I think more to come. I want to open up talking about the Celtic Fans Collective, because we're on the verge of an AGM, and the main purpose of you being here today is to talk about the Celtic Trust. Shareholders who might never have looked at their shares since the day they bought them, sometimes maybe 30 years ago, and send out a message to people to say, we can actually make a difference here. But there's so much other things happening as well. So leading up to the AGM, there's so much to discuss. I can't think of a time of so much change leading into an AGM, to such a point where fans have come together, there's been a unity, and it's the Celtic Fans Collective. I still get a lot of people asking on my live stream every day or on social media about how this came to be, what's the makeup, who's the steering group, how you come to decisions. You want to give us a wee breakdown of how the Celtic Fans Collective is working?
Well, I think most people know that how it came to be was there was an original set of questions which we wanted to put to the board, and some of the main, so the North Curve, Green Brigade, the Boys and the Celtic Trust, I think, were the first 4 organisations to sign up to a letter, an open public letter saying, look, you need to, there's a real problem here. There's a problem with your transfer market activity. There's a problem with your fan engagement. There's a problem with transparency. This is no good. Everybody can see it. There's a problem with your corporate governance. There's so there's a set of questions, and they were put out. But very, very quickly, lots of other organisations and supporters clubs and the like wanted to get involved. All of the main Celtic sports organisations that I can think are signed up to that, as are multiple other supporters clubs and so on, and 420 or whatever it is. And so obviously you have to organise something like that. So as you know, there was an original meeting where all those signatories met and decided to start off with a steering group. That steering group itself was actually quite big. It's about 21 now. There was 23, I think 2 stepped down, just for no negative reasons. So there's about 21 people there who represent the organisations and various other people with particular skills. And then around about that are more people with skills. So they're in a series of working groups. So there's a corporate working group, which is obviously looking at the AGM and all of that angle of it. There's kind of match day activity. There's a kind of a research subgroup which goes away and finds out things if we need to do, back up the media and so on. There's a media subgroup, and as you know yourself, there's a collection of fan, that's the groupings that I didn't mention, the sort of fan media. So there's people such as yourself on that. And what it has done up to now has either met online or it has, it's got like a chat which, is really, really active. More active than anything I've ever been involved in on a day-to-day basis. There are conversations, because this is a very, very fast-moving situation, and obviously events of the last week, which I'm assuming we're going to go on to talk about, It is incredible, really, the kinds of things that have been happening. So a very fast-moving, regular thing. So there's a real desire for two things. One is to get as many people involved in this as we can, and secondly, to be as united and democratic as we can. And I mean, something bigger and more substantive, hopefully will come out of that. But at the moment, obviously, we're just running to keep still to try and make everything work. But I think we've done fantastically. I mean, the comms people are amazing, the kinds of things they're able to put out quickly. And having been involved in a Celtic fan organisation for more than 25 years in the case of the Trust, just over 25 years, I know how difficult it is to keep people active and keep people doing and keep a hold of everything. And so the way that this has been done, and obviously the bigger numbers makes that easier. The more people there are, the fewer work there is for individuals to do. But even so, there's still, a lot of work going on. So that's what's been happening. There is going to be another meeting this week between the steering group and all of the people who are in the working groups. And they're just people who've put their names forward. So anybody can do that. Anybody can get in touch and say, I can do X, Y, or Z, or I just want to be somebody who helps, whatever. Then anybody can do that. Nobody's excluded here. And, get involved in that thing. So there's going to be a meeting with all of those people, and we're going to be obviously concentrating very much on the AGM, which is taking place on the 21st. So a big concentration in that. But obviously there'll need to be some discussion about what's been happening over the last week or so, and how we're going to... We responded over the weekend in terms of putting out statements on it, and obviously there was a match day response, which is hilarious, really. But anyway, so that's what we're doing, and really, we're here and everybody can get involved. This is the most united I have ever known the Celtic support to be. But I think there's an obvious reason for that. It's in the face of the most intransigent board I think I've ever seen. In fact, their intransigence is only matched by their incompetence, as far as I could see.
My biggest shock was at that meeting. I know that you were out of the country at the time, Jeanette, and I don't know how the likes of Paul, etc., were able to keep their calm, because it was so frustrating to be faced by those who represent your club, who are on a completely different page when it comes to the vision of the football club. A lot of people have criticised us, maybe from the outside looking in, saying, what have you got to moan about? This is Celtic, you always win. And I always remember a journalist had chased Desmond for years and years for an interview. And finally he found out that he would be at a headquarters somewhere at one of these organisations, and he blagged through the receptionist, blagged a phone call to Desmond. His first question was, how many trophies have Celtic won since I became involved? And this is the attitude. It's almost as if, put the trophies on the table and don't ask me questions.
But did he win them?
Well, I can't remember any last minute goals from the mustachioed one, but there is this attitude of, do not question us. We know best. Just stay in line, pay your season tickets.
Particularly in the case of that individual, who's a very, very unpleasant individual. And I simply don't care how many times Neil Lennon or Brendan Rodgers or anybody else who happens to be in his, feeling beholden to him at any point in time, going about Mr. Desmond and how nice he is. I think he's an extremely unpleasant man. I would go so far as to say he's a bully. And I think I have no doubt that some of the things that's happened over the last week have directly come from an order from him. Now, I don't have proof of that, but I think it's probably true.
I think we'll run through it, Jeanette, and we'll just basically leave the viewers to decide. If you look at a trend of events and you think to yourself, is this all coincidental? Just leave the viewers to decide. So Desmond, as we know, and this will come into the conversation, particularly with an AGM coming up, 34.7% shareholding in Celtic. Non-executive director calls all the shots. He's got 100% of the say. And when other broadcasters ask us to speak via Acsom, a lot of Celtic fans don't like that. It's like you're sleeping with the enemy. But I sometimes think it's important to speak to them just to put this across, because they continually call Dermot Desmond the owner of the football club, Celtic's owner. And a couple of weeks ago I said, well, he's not. He's actually not the owner.
No.
And this is where the Celtic Trust comes into play as well, because there are certain things that can be done. At the moment, I feel absolutely, for me, it was almost as if I'm powerless as a Celtic fan to do anything. And it's taken people like yourself to say, actually, there is a way, and this is the way that you can have more influence. Because we could wake up tomorrow, as it stands, and Celtic could be sold.
Yep.
And we wouldn't know about it until news is broken. Jeanette, that's frightening, isn't it?
That is frightening, but I would just maybe pick you up on one thing. Don't ever feel powerless, because you opened this by talking about when the Celtic fans get together and want to do something, they achieve it. And that is absolutely the case. I mean, the Celtic fans almost, just to digress for a minute, but almost single-handedly as a group had, I mean, there were other fan groups involved, but we led it, overturned a piece of legislation. That's just unheard of. We built a memorial to our ancestors in circumstances where, and I think the first, I think about £40,000 of the cost of that, more than half, came almost directly for the Celtic support, and the rest came, you know, indirectly for the Celtic support. We did that. We overturned the convictions of 5-hour number after 5 years of campaigning for who were assaulted by the police in Amsterdam. So when the Celtic support decide they're doing something, they do it. They built and paid for the memorial to Brother Walfrid that sits at the front of Celtic Park, which I'll just point out is currently now behind 2 rows of railings, which are preventing the people who paid for that statue to have the photographs taken next to it. I'm assuming because somebody inside that building thinks that they don't want us to take over that space and annoy their pre-match entertainment. But that's shocking. That statue was built and paid for by us and installed by us. In fact, I am, you know, marking today the 11th anniversary of my brother-in-law, who died very young, but he died 11 years ago today. And he was one of the people who put that statue in place, just went, put it in. I don't know if they asked in advance, but it went in, and subsequently that was fine. So all good. But that's what they say, that's the power of us as an organised group of people. And the more organised we are, and of course there are divisions, you know, you can have 60,000 Celtic fans and 60,000 opinions. People say all of that. Well, by and large, I think that's an exaggeration. I think a lot of things we're very, very united on, and this organisation is great. So in terms of what we can do now, well, we're doing it. So one of the things that the collective decided to do, because boycotts are really, really difficult things. They've never worked, they don't work, because everybody wants to go to the game. And I understand that. And I've never taken part in a boycott of a match or anything like that. So the boycott that is happening now relates to all ancillary expenditure. So everything else, merchandise, you know, food at the stadium, all of those kinds of things. And if we're to go by the lack of queues outside the superstore and the lack of queues at the kiosks, I think it's working. And I've watched individuals who I know are regulars at the pie stall not going to the pie stall. I think that's really working, and was probably almost in place before the collective called it, because it was clear that people had, you know, they'd got rid of their home cop, withdrawn for the home cop ticket scheme, which we didn't ask people to do, and they'd already stopped buying things. So there is a real power in that, which I think will be cumulative. So I think that would be really important. Then there's the match day activity, there's the things outside the ground. You know, again, there'll be disagreements, you know, about whether, you know, disrupting the start of a game, as we did a few weeks ago, or going in late, as we did some weeks before that. You know, those are the kinds of things that some people will not like. But here's the thing. If you do things, if you take action, you will get some things wrong. And the only way not to get anything wrong is to do fuck all. So, do you allow me on this? Yeah. So that's the only way that you can always be sure that you'll never do anything that people don't like, is just to do nothing. Oh, you can do nothing and sit and comment for the sidelines. You can do that. And there's a lot of people who like doing that as well. So there's lots of things that are being done, but you're right, the AGM is really significant. And for us as an organisation, because our organisation is really about the corporate governance of Celtic and ultimately the ownership and control of Celtic. Now, you're absolutely right, and I'm sure other people have said this on your programme, on your podcast, sorry, about, so there are 28,000 individual shareholders in Celtic. I don't think as many as 1,200 have ever actually voted.
Right.
And it's thought, and various numbers are bandied about, but if you look at the people who, like me, who bought the smallest amount of shares in the first share issue in 1995 and have owned them ever since, if you look at all of those people and then the subsequent couple of share issues, we think there's potentially somewhere between 25 and 30% of shares are held by people like me, fans who don't own shares in anything else, and all I own are Celtic shares, and there will be, you know, thousands upon tens of thousands of people like that. And as I say, only 1,200 individuals. I don't think it's even ever went to 1,200, but round about that number ever actually vote at an AGM. Now, if all of those people used the vote, then we could do some really significant things. So the Celtic Trust has a thing, still has it, called the Drive for Five. And the point about trying to combine 5% in a vote is because at 5% you can call an EGM. Now, if we could ensure that we could get 5% of the shareholding, no 5% of the shareholders, if you see what I mean. So 5% of the shareholding, however many that's spread between, to sign a motion asking for an EGM would have been called, and we could have called an EGM and said, account for yourself, account for your performance. Once you get above, if you got up to all of that, like 25 to 30%, then that's a significant holding. It's almost close to what Dermot Desmond's is.
Yeah.
And you start to be able, and as you say, if somebody wanted to come in, if he decided to sell, and bought more shares or bought up around his and a bit more, he could force us to sell a person could come in, whoever that would be, probably would be a he, given the nature of the world and the patriarchy, but anyway, it would be a he, and they would be able to just force us to sell them their shares, and they could just take over, and they would be a single owner. That could happen. And so some people say, oh, well, maybe better the devil, but I think the evidence is not. But we want to be in a position where it's not a choice between Dermot Desmond and some, I don't know, Russian oligarch or, sheikh or something like that. It should be between a much broader share ownership, much broader ownership and control, and all of those things. So these are achievable. Celtic Trust, what the Celtic Trust does is it uses all of its membership subs to buy shares over and above a very, very small amount for administration, but we buy shares. And we own at the moment 170,000 ordinary shares. That makes us actually among the top 10 individual shareholders in Celtic. But of course, the difference between the 10th and the first is light years.
Yeah.
But that puts us there. So if we were to just say, right, okay, join the trust and give us your £5 a month and then we'll buy shares, then it's going to take us a very, very long time before you're ever going to be in a position to reach even 5%, never mind anything above that. But what we also focus on is a shareholders portal. So it's just like a register on the site. You just come in and you say, I own shares. I am either a member of the trust or not a member of the trust. It doesn't matter. And say, I am giving you my contact details and you can, and my permission to contact me whenever there's an AGM or an EGM and ask me to support whatever it is that you're trying to do at that time. And if you were to get everybody who had shares to sign up to that, we would then have the mechanism whereby if we wanted to call an EGM or some other thing, or put a resolution forward that would have some chance of winning an AGM, we would have the mechanism to immediately email all of those people and say, will you vote your shares in favour of this? So that's the plan. It's very simple. It's costless. You know, if you have shares, join in. Now, as you've heard from other people before, lots of people have absolutely no idea what to do with their shares. They've either, put them, they're somewhere. You know, they might not even remember where their share certificate is. So lots of people, so there'll be people who don't know where their share certificate is. There'll be people who are not registered with the registrar's Computershare, and we'll maybe talk about them later. And there are people who the original owner of the shares has died and they still hold the certificate, but they've never actually formally transferred the ownership. So there's lots of people in different categories who don't vote because basically they don't know how to, they don't get mailings for Celtic, so Celtic has lost contact with them.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of people that us and others are looking to help and say, look, get in touch, tell us where you are, we'll talk you through the steps to be able to reconnect with your shares, and thereafter, please use your shares. You know, register on the portal, use your shares. And these are mechanisms and they matter. And the reason why the Celtic Trust punches way, way beyond its weight in terms of its number of members, it's because the Celtic board know that apart from one other instance, and in that case we helped them as well, the only shareholder requisition resolutions that ever sully their big day are ours. They know we can do that. They know we now have been doing it for years. We're very good at doing it. We can do it very quickly. We do it under very difficult circumstances, often created by them, and we get them in. So that tells you that matters to them. So yes, if you have shares, please get in touch with us. If you have shares, but in principle you have shares, but you don't actually know where they are or whose name they're in or whatever, get in touch with us. All of those kinds of things, so that we can start to put this together.
Yeah, and you're also going to have a drop-in as well this week on Thursday.
Yes.
Grace's.
Yeah. Between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock, there'll be people there. If you want to come in and you've either received your papers in paper form, you know, so you have them through your door, bring them, or more likely you've had an email for the club, in which case come in with them, or you're somebody who doesn't get any communication for the club, in which case come and talk to us and we'll also talk to you about how you get connected again. So if you're in any of those categories and you want to use your vote, or you want to ensure that you get your vote, which you've still got time to do now, even if you don't know where those shares are at this moment or how to connect, there is still time between now and the AGM to get your vote for the AGM. So come in on Thursday night between 7 and 9. If you can't make it between 7 and 9, email the trust at celtictrust.net, and somebody will get in touch with you, probably me, and I do a lot of that, but somebody will get in touch with you and we'll talk you through how to do that. Or just go onto the trust website where there's information for shareholders.
I'm really glad you're here today, because we get a lot of questions on the live stream. Some people email us and some people actually approach us at some of our live events, Jeanette. So this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. Before we get to the AGM and some of the things that we've had to deal with over the last wee while, we'll go back to the letter. It was then undersigned. There was 420 plus signatories, not individuals. We're talking groups, associations, affiliations. Everybody you could imagine was undersigned. It was an incredible coming together. And this prompted a meeting with the club, the CEO, the CFO, where the questions within that letter were not answered. The discussion points that were put to those individuals, I mean, the answers just were not fit for purpose, and a lot of the answers that were being given have been proven to be inaccurate. When you look at what's happened with the manager, the signing policy, how together they were. Things have not been right for a long time, but when you've got the manager of your football club, it doesn't matter if you wanted Brendan in charge or not, coming out and saying, these guys bleed for Celtic and all this, Jeanette, and you're thinking to yourself, he's been told to say this, right? And then we have our meeting and you can see right through them and you're asking questions and they're batting them away. They thought their original statement was okay because they had spoken to Celtic fans and they thought it was all right. they said it hadn't landed with some Celtic supporters. And it just seemed to me as if we were worlds apart. But even since then, we've had the resignation stroke sacking of Brendan Rodgers, the reintroduction of Martin O'Neill to Celtic Park, and then that statement by Dermot. So I'm going to go back to something you said before, the bullying aspect. There was no need for that statement, was there, for Dermot to come out and obliterate the character of a previous manager?
Oh, Dermot Desmond's statement, you don't mean the original, right, okay.
Oh, the original one, that was bad enough, right?
Okay, which I don't think was written by Ian Jamieson, Celtic's PR. I don't think that was written by him. He's been around long enough to know that that's how that statement was going to land. There would be no surprise. If I wanted to guess, and of course I can guess, I don't know, I would guess that came again straight from the hand of Dermot Desmond or somebody instructed by him to do it, because that statement didn't come for anybody who's used to putting out statements.
Yeah.
For Celtic, bad as they can sometimes be, they're not that daft. Dermot Desmond's statement, well, I think that's the basis on which I can say things like he's a very unpleasant individual and he's very thin-skinned. Because if that didn't come across like somebody who was like personally injured, personally absolutely affronted that anybody would do something that he didn't like, or, you know, oppose him in any way, or question his, you know, his wonderfulness or whatever it is. I mean, it came across as somebody who was just completely beside himself with rage at being questioned. And I think that's the evidence of what he's like. He's made very few statements about Celtic or come out in a public or given interviews. There was one many years ago where two members of officers of the Celtic Supporters Association went to Dublin to interview him, and he gave them an interview. It's got to be 20 years ago. I can't remember exactly when. And so they arrive, and he's given them some time. He walks in. He doesn't even offer them as much as a drink of water.
No, you're not a cup of tea.
No, I mean, I did get a drink of water, but he didn't even offer them as much as a drink of water. Gave them an interview in which, and you know, he named me. He said, and this was when the trust was in its very early stages, something along the lines. Now I won't hold to this as an exact quote. Was basically saying, "I'll not be told by Jeanette Findlay how to spend my money," or something like this. And you think, a man of a billionaire who, and that sort of money buys you a huge amount of power and a huge amount of protection for the normal world. And he's having a go at a wee single parent for the East End. You know what I mean? He's having a go at a named Celtic fan. You know, really? You know, that's just, so that, and then this most recent one, actually I can't remember much in between, but that and this most recent one, and the way the sort of sycophantic slabbering of a succession of managers who always feel the need to tell you how wonderful he is. And that tells me, that's the evidence upon which I will say he's an unpleasant man and a bully. That's the base on which I say that. So, sorry, I got a bit carried away there. I can't remember exactly what the question was.
That actually, I was totally unaware of that. But the way I look at it, Jeanette, is he's basically referring to a Celtic fan.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who that is. You know, and it's like, how on earth should he?
Well, it's revolting, it's demeaning, and I know a lot of Celtic fans were talking about, was it true or was it not true? I think that was a complete irrelevance. You know, it may well have been true. He may well have said that Dermot Desmond Brendan Rodgers may well have behaved dishonestly. I don't know. It may well be true. I didn't really care about that. They were like rats in a sack, to be honest, the whole lot of them. I cared about the fact that a non-executive director took over the club's social media platform to put out a personal statement which just so lacked dignity and class. It was horrible. You know, it was horrible. And I care about that. Is this his plaything? Is our club his plaything? I mean, effectively it is. It's his toy to do whatever he wants with. I think that's appalling, and I will oppose that as long as I'm able to oppose that.
I think that's important. And with regards to the power that Celtic fans can have if they club together, when it comes to voting rights, it's really important that everybody realises that Desmond is often viewed as the immovable object, but there are ways to oppose that. And in the future, again, I always go back to this, Jeanette. When you think about, underwriting share issues, when you think about the shares that he purchased to get to the 34.7 and what the club has achieved during that period, absolutely tremendous. But we're in a different era now. We're in a different era. When Dermot Desmond first invested in Celtic in 1995, we're a different football club. This is 30 years on, and we need to move on from where we are. We're no longer chasing Rangers. We're no longer this parochial club that's only going to be satisfied by winning league after league after league. We want to expand the club. We want to be the best that we can be. We keep talking about it in here on Acsom. It's only about having the best recruitment, the best academy, best football department, the best stadium. And at the moment, we don't.
Oh, we don't.
We don't have that.
No, we don't.
So what Dermot's done, none of them. And we're not even nearing some of them, which is quite worrying. And for the CEO and the CFO to sit there and say, well, the recruitment, we brought in 9 players. You're thinking, but we have to move on from what we did against Bayern Munich and take it to that another level. And it's almost as if, and I know it's been described as they take us to a point and then they bring us right back down again. Do you subscribe to the fact that if you stand still, a team like Rangers, who I think they want to be our main rivals, or even Hearts, who got their house in order, come back into the frame, they're quite happy. They're quite happy to have a challenge.
I absolutely do. And I would contend that Desmond himself, but that entire board who are, grouped around him, are the effective constraint to us ever being more than just a little bit better than Rangers. I mean, what kind of a ambition is that? It's very clear. And if that's not the case, if Dermot Desmond isn't the effective constraint, let's hear about it. Let's hear for Celtic about why, about how and in which way that's not the case. They're really only, look, we should have been out of sight.
Yeah.
Out of sight. And we're not, because they want to hold on to that. I don't even think it's their niche market. I don't know what they think about it. I'm not a business person, so I don't know about that. But they really are only interested in just being a little bit better than them. And the mismatch of the ambitions of ordinary fans like us and that board is so stark. It's just so stark. They think this is okay. They think a win against Kilmarnock at the weekend makes everything okay. It does not. It does not. Now, we're in a different world from we were in 67. Maybe it would be unreasonable to think we're ever going to be back in that situation. But at the very least, our whole plan should be about making inroads in Europe. And I mean a plan. I don't mean a wish list. I don't want a list of, we want to be world class in this and world class in that. We know no strategy about how to get there, no public, milestones, no publicly stated things, well, we're going to do this at this time, this at that. Because frankly, I'd be prepared to wait. I mean, supporting Celtic's an intergenerational thing. If I thought we had a plan and they had a plan and they were able to set out how they're going to get there, even if that was a very long time and that maybe only my children would see it or my grandchildren would see it, I could almost live with that. I could almost live with that. I could then be willing to say the current custodians of our club are fit for purpose. But I'm not saying that. You're not saying that. We're not saying that. So no. People sort of think we are unrealistic or we're pampered or we're, entitled or what. No. We just want some coming together of the ambitions of the fans. and them. And if there's a way, if do you know, tell us about what the reason. Don't tell us, oh, we have this real difficulty in the transfer market because, you know, these agents, they keep doing things like to try and get more money out of us. And you think, all right, okay, first of all, that's basically how capitalism operates, which you're very much in favour of. We're not, but you are. And secondly, how is that different for you as opposed to every other club in the country or the world, really?
Yeah.
That's how agents operate. So that's no reason why your transfer dealings hadn't just been rubbish in this transfer or the most recent transfer period. And a whole set of them have been rubbish for some time. So don't tell us nonsense. Don't insult us. You know, we may not be privy to all of the details that goes on behind the scenes. We may not be involved in that line of work. We may not be business people, and we might be joiners or plumbers or whatever it is that we might be. But don't talk to us as if we're idiots. Don't talk to us as though we can't read. So it's very, very frustrating. And yes, the answer to your question is yes, I do subscribe to that view.
Yeah, because it's hard not to. It's hard to look at it and say, what's the reason why we haven't strengthened season on season? And with the excuses of financial fair play or certain tax implications in certain countries, it just doesn't wash. And when I'm looking at the progression of Celtic, we just spoke there about 95. Now, I remember it vividly. My first season ticket was 94, 95. That's now 31 years ago, 1994. So it does happen. If I knew what was going to happen in the next 25 to 30 years in the world of Celtic, like yourself, I'd buy into that vision, but there is no vision. I want to also talk about this us v them. It should never be us v them between the club and the fan base, but that's exactly what's been happening recently. So from a fan media perspective, obviously we're treated with contempt, and I think most people are appreciative of that. We're treated with absolute contempt. Certain things are said and done that is aimed to try and damage our reputations. But that goes beyond fan media. It goes to the Green Brigade. It goes to the Trust trying to be organised for this forthcoming AGM. So we'll start off with the Green Brigade. They get a banning order. It was a suspended sentence, if you like, 6 games. But then I think the club, with the police and with the stewards, are, some might say, antagonising the fans, certainly looking for a reason to spark that banning order into place. And that's exactly what's happened. 6 games. So I'm going to use the example of many fans saying, you're going to have this action at a game, Jeanette. You're harming the team on the park by doing that. Well, the most vociferous, colourful and loud area of Celtic Park is the Green Brigade. It's the North Curve. And you're preventing them from getting into a game. Is that harming the team on the park?
Well, what I would say is to deal with that thing right away. The group of people who are doing the most harm to the team on the park is the board of Celtic PLC. They're the people who have done the most harm. They're the people who have sold players, haven't arranged for replacements in good time. They're the people who are doing the most harm to the team in the park. So if you want to be somebody who says, I'm only interested in the team in the park, then point yourself towards the boardroom, because that's where the damage is coming from. And I simply refuse to accept that a team of very well-paid professional sports people can be so put off their game by having to wait 5 minutes for some bouncy balls and tangerines to be moved, or for, you know, some people to come in a bit late or whatever. Now, I'm willing to accept that if you play in a stadium which is generally very loud, very noisy, very colourful or whatever, then you'll miss that. I get that. I get that. I think there was something much worse than that going on behind the scenes. Nothing to do with us. Something that's going on in the changing room. No one actually in the stadium. So, yeah, I think it's nonsense to say that anything that we can do is going to really be. I think we can lift the team. I think we can lift the team at certain times. So in that sense, you're absolutely right to try and attack, you know, one of the 2 sections which provide most of the noise at home games. Now, when you're at away games, it's slightly different. But certainly at Celtic Park, those 2 sections lead the singing and lead all of the
Yeah.
all of the main sort of like, noise and chants and what have you. So yeah, that whole thing. So they were given this 3-game suspended sentence, and it's really pitiful, to be honest, to hear terms like that being used, but for displaying a flag in support of Palestine at the end of last season. Something which I think very many Celtic fans are completely aligned with and would support. And so that was hanging over them. And going alongside this as in that section, and there may well be, and there probably is, an issue of people moving round to get into that section. I think what that, who don't have tickets in that section. And I think that tells you that there's demand for that kind of real seating. I think that's what that tells you. Of course, Celtic as usual treat that as a security issue. To some extent it is a security issue, but what you do with that, and again, this is no rocket science. Go and speak to the organised group that's in that section and say, right, how do we do this? How do we manage this? We'll talk about, and they have announced that they're going to have a feasibility study into expanding this. But in the meantime, for safety reasons, quite reasonable, we can't have people just getting into that section who don't have tickets for that section. How do we do this? How will we do it? What do? They don't have any of that conversation. They put up some big metal barriers. They start to hugely harass people. So demand constant ticket checks just to come down and go to the toilet or go to the kiosk. Well, no need to go to the kiosk now, but anyway, and all of that to such an extent. So I know a woman of my age who was coming back for the kiosk some weeks ago with cups and like stopped by a steward to show me your ticket, like come back in. She's already been in her seat. She's come down, she's a woman she's walking back in and she's hassled and she's saying, oh, don't be so ridiculous, and eventually a steward who knew her came over and said, like, just go in, and that was fine. And it was handled by somebody being a bit sensible. Of course, if she's a 22-year-old boy or an 18-year-old boy, she's not, that's not how she's going to be treated. There was another case where there was a young child who came down and went to go to the toilet or something. It's coming back and they say, where's your ticket? They said, well, Daddy's got my ticket. And they said, well, no letting you up. So he has to phone his dad. His daddy comes down and they actually took their tickets off them, put the two of them up. The daddy had to go and collect the tickets. So there's been constant harassment. They've been putting the police back in there where they hadn't been before. There'd been some agreement that, that was just raising the tension. So you've got police officers paid by you and I to act as stewards at Celtic Park. Why is that happening? So they harass the life out of people and then they provoke incidents. And then that gives them the opportunity to say, so this was going to happen. It's been built up, and the people who told them it was going to happen are the very people they've now banned. They were told, this is getting worse. We need to, we want to complain about this incident. They actually complained about the incident, which is the pretext for imposing what is effectively a 6-match ban because they don't get their away tickets. That's how they do it. They say, who's on this ticket scheme for that group? Right, you're the people. Although they've included some other people who aren't on that scheme, but they just knew who they were and added them. And then so they go, right, okay, you won't be getting your tickets for away games. So it's really 6 games that they'll miss. And that's absolutely shocking. But of course, what happened on Sunday was they said, no be only. and they turned up. So great, absolutely fantastic.
Always a step ahead, Jeanette.
So is it, so they're even incompetent when it comes to being, oppressive.
But that oppression, though, to antagonise people.
Yeah, that's what it was.
I mean, some of the examples you've given who are just going about their business, if you like, and they're antagonising them, some people will react. You will provoke a reaction. If you poke the dog long enough, you're going to get bit.
You physically lay your hands on people, you will react.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm a 65-year-old woman. If somebody comes and pushes me or puts their hands on me, I will react. Probably not very effectively, but you will.
Yeah.
Because you should not have to surrender, your rights as a citizen when you walk inside a football ground. That was a lot of what we had to say during the FIT campaign.
Yeah.
You do not give up your rights as soon as you walk into a football club. You don't allow, people to just, shove you about, and you're paying for the privilege.
This is a thing, because I always find it interesting how a fan has become a customer in the modern game.
Yeah.
Jeanette, you wouldn't treat a fan or a customer like that.
Well, this is the thing. We're a customer when it suits them, but you don't treat customers like that. So, but we're no customers when when it suits them as well. So it's really just it's all very designed to suit whatever narrative they're trying to put out at any point in time. Oh, we're all pals. We're a Celtic family. And we're this, that, and the other. Here, come and buy some stuff. Or you're a customer, so we're removing your season ticket rights for this period. Please check the stadium conditions. Read the small print. Have you ever read the stadium conditions? Because I haven't. And my first season ticket was in 87, 88, I think. So I mean, no, I've never read them either.
We're probably at a point. Some might argue that obviously the early 90s was maybe the lowest ebb. But in terms of a relationship between fans and club, I can't think it being as bad as this. Because back then, I remember looking at the board, and I was hugely influenced by the pages of the fanzines at the time, and I just thought they were useless, unfit for purpose, incompetent. This board that we've got now are completely different in that they're in their ivory tower. The club is rich. We got them there, because they've maybe done a bit of wheeling and dealing in the transfer market and all this, Jeanette, but we got the club where it is. The only reason you get a global deal is if you've got a global fan base. So all the merchandise...
We are Celtic.
Exactly. And they don't see it.
All of the money that goes into Celtic PLC comes either directly or indirectly from us.
Yeah.
Without us, there is no product. Nobody, Celtic, as much as we would like to think they are, they wouldn't be the draw that they are in terms of television or anything else if it was not for us. We are the lifeblood in every possible moral and financial way. We are Celtic. And nobody will ever, I always refer to them as the current custodians, because that's what they are. Mm-hmm. They don't own Celtic in any moral sense. You could argue those individuals don't own it outright in any other sense. We own it. We are Celtic. Without us, there's nothing.
Everybody else is just passing through.
And we're just, exactly. So, look, we all know this stuff. We've been talking about it for years. That disconnect between the board, and it's gone up and down. It changes. Mm-hmm. It goes up and down. But as somebody who's been involved in meetings with Celtic, a succession of chairpersons or chief executives or whatever over the years, it does go up and down. So if things are going well, they don't, they meet you regularly. If things are not going well, they kind of suddenly their diaries are full and they haven't had time to speak to you. So I've sat in, and what was really interesting about the meeting you referred to, which was the meeting with the collective, which, as you say, I was on holiday at the time. It gave an insight to a lot of people who hadn't previously sat in those kinds of meetings into how those people feel about us. It gave a real insight that most people don't have, because most people haven't been to those kinds of meetings. It didn't really, well, I was going to say it didn't really surprise me, the feedback we got for that, but it did surprise me a bit, because I did actually genuinely think they had realised that they had to do something and they had to offer something. They had to think about, come some way to meet what people were saying. Mm-hmm. I did think they'd realised that when they offered the meeting. I did actually think that, but turns out. So I was a little bit surprised about how dismissive and negative they were, but I can only think, those specific individuals I've been in meetings with before, they're not always as bad as that. They can be, look, I'm going off talk a bit, but I've spent, a lifetime as a trade unionist. So when you're a trade unionist, and I think of the Celtic Trust as being a trade union for Celtic fans, that's how I think about it. In some sense, you make relationships. You make relationships with management, with HR, because basically it's not because you're selling out or you're cozying up to them, it's because you actually have to have conversations with them. And sometimes they have things that you want and are more pleasant. You catch more flies with honey, as Mary McCusker, a previous Celtic Trust secretary, used to say. Sometimes you can have, if you have a reasonably pleasant relationship, you can get things for fans, that you want. In the end, there's a line that they won't cross and you won't cross. But so you have to have some kind of relationship with employers, with HR, with management and so on, so that you can do stuff for your members. That's basically how it works, and we all behave professionally, we all do that. And I think that's the same with Celtic. So over the piece, I've seen evidence of that. I've seen evidence of where you can phone somebody up. And, I've had phone calls for very senior people at Celtic on a Sunday when I'm eating my dinner, it's before I had to play football on a Sunday, but anyway, about things that most people would think are really trivial, like, can we sort this right? Oh no,
Yeah.
can we sort this right? You make a wee phone call, you sort something out. It's not about selling out or cozying up or getting, I personally haven't had anything. I do sometimes get a cup of tea when I've been in the boardroom, but that's, in those meetings. But anyway, so it's not about that. It's about actually smoothing the way to achieving what it is you're trying to achieve for your members. That's what happens as a trade unionist. That's what happens as a fan group. Now, there is a danger to that because you can be incorporated into them, and there may be some people think that has already happened, that some fan groups are a bit too close to them, and maybe that happens in terms of people in trade union roles as well. People think you're too close to management or whatever. So there is, and that's about accountability. So that's about having to come back and say, look, this is what we said, this is what happened. And then you go in there with a mandate for whoever it is you're representing, saying, this is what we want, don't come back out with anything less, or at least come back and tell us we're not getting it, and you don't give way on anything else. So I've mixed up a whole load of metaphors there, but basically I'm saying over the years, I've seen that relationship work, and you get things, but at this point in time that relationship is hugely fractured and damaged. There are no phone calls going on behind the scenes, there are no wee side chats, there's nothing like that going on. The current company secretary has not been in touch with us. Now normally what happens, and when I say normally I mean for 25 years, whoever's the company secretary, including when it was Michael Nicholson, would say, right, let's have a meeting. We have a meeting, right, okay, have you got a resolution? Yeah. Are you planning to put in a resolution? Yeah, we are. Blah, blah, blah. Here's how we'll do it. On the day, Computershare will meet you. They'll have your proxies there. And, you'll get called to the mic to propose your resolution. So there's all that, just the kind of management of what will happen. She never came near us. So when we were putting in the resolution requisition forums, obviously we emailed us out, here's that, and that was fine. She said, fine, right, okay, I'll accept them, and I'll send them and we transfer or whatever it is that we did. And we did all of that, and that was fine. We had to do that very quickly because we weren't told in time when the deadline was. We actually ended up getting something about 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday to be in for the Tuesday. So, it was ridiculous, but we did it and we got them in. What would normally then happen is your company secretary would come back to us and say, right, okay, you put in, say, 119 forums. We ruled out, 7 of them because we couldn't match them on the register, or we did this, that, and that, and you've met the criteria, and the resolutions will be on the agenda. Nothing. Never heard of it back until the day. And we usually get the ones that are ruled out back so that we can go back to people and say, you'll need to sort this for next year. Nothing. Couldn't get anything. And all we knew was when the papers came out that our resolutions were on the agenda. That was the first contact we had. Then we have the situation, and I don't know if you want me to talk about that.
Yep.
So as soon as the paper, and I think I received mine on the 28th of October, so I think probably they would more or less all have come out, run about 24 hours at that time, before or after. And the voting system would have been opened for that time. And that's run by Computershare, who are the registrars for Celtic PLC. So you can go and you can register your proxy and you can register your vote. So you can either say, yeah, this is how I want to vote and I want the chairman to vote, or whatever it is you want to do. Or it could be, you want to register the Celtic Trust or whatever. And we kept getting messages, and including some of our own, officers saying, I can't get this voting system to work. It keeps saying there's an error. It keeps saying. So this went on for a period. And eventually I phoned ComputerShare because we were getting emails and we were getting social media messages. Now, I'm quite sure the company secretary knew this. And if she didn't know it, I don't know what she's done. So we go to them and they say, oh, no. There's votes in, the voting system's working, there are votes coming in. And I said, well, I'm going to send you screenshots of what people are getting, which I did. That then goes on. And just before the kick-off of the game, last week, that's one game, I get a phone call for a more senior ComputerShare person. So this is in the evening. What was that, 5:45 kick-off? It was an early
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
so it was about just 5 minutes before that. Just to say, and he started to speak and I said, look, the game's about to kick off, go just phone us in the morning. So phones me at 9 o'clock the next day, says, just to say that slight problem, now you're 11 days in, 11 days, has been resolved. I said, well, that's great. Okay. And can I just say, could you tell people that if they want to proxy to the Celtic Trust, to put an officer of the CT or an officer of the capital T, small ST? And I said, sorry, what are you talking about? And he said, oh, could you tell them to put that? And I said, why? Because we've never done that before. And we've been doing this quite successfully for a very long time. And he said, oh, well, it's just that this new system is picking up the word trust. So, you can have a trust company, so you can't proxy a vote to a company or a trust company.
Right.
So their system was picking up the word trust and rejecting it. So I said, so are you telling me that only the proxies to the Celtic Trust are being rejected? Only our proxies? And he went, yeah, because it's this word trust. And I said, how did you not know that? How has it taken 11 days for this to happen? Anyway, so he had no answer for that. He couldn't tell me why that was. And bear in mind, Celtic's company secretary told us the format that it was to be an officer of the Celtic Trust. That's who tells us. It doesn't tell us this year, but it's been the same for years. So nobody tells us we've got this new system. Now, I'm happy, I'm willing to accept, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm willing to accept that something in that system did do that. What I don't accept is how it took them 11 days to work it out, how a voting system, which, bear in mind, I've told you already, 1,200 people. Now, you could do that by hand. We're talking 1,200 here. Over 11 days, you could have done that by hand, checked every one of them and seen what was happening, and how the company secretary sat in their hands for 11 days while one group of shareholders were being denied their rights. So the trust contacts the company secretary and said, we want to see you at 9 o'clock on Monday morning to discuss what you're going to do about this. And she comes back and says, that's too short notice. And I'm thinking, what is it you're doing as company secretary that is more important than defending the integrity of a PLC AGM? What is it you're doing on Monday morning? So we said, right, okay. She said, I can phone you. I said, no, don't phone us. We want a meeting. Well, we can do a Teams meeting. I said, no, we don't want a Teams meeting. We want a meeting. Now, they have absolutely refused to meet us. They want a Teams meeting, an online meeting to discuss I can't tell you, you hear by my voice that I'm really this is shocking.
Yeah.
Really shocking that this has happened. And they're refusing to meet us in person. This is unprecedented. A word that I seem to be using quite a lot now, but unprecedented. This has
To
happened.
meet Celtic shareholders.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
The representatives of Celtic shareholders.
Yeah.
A shareholder. We see ourselves as a fan, small shareholder group, but for their purposes and for the purposes of the AGM, we're a shareholder group, and they're refusing to meet us in person to deal with a situation where only our proxies were rejected. you know, it's akin to a six-match ban for the Green Brigade.
Yeah.
It's akin to hounding fan media about copyright issues. Bear in mind that the current company secretary was the copyright. Her previous role, I think, was copyright Obersturmführer or whatever. I don't know what the exact title was, but something along those lines. So, yeah.
And what amazes me, Jeanette, is the time and effort it takes to do these things could be better spent in building bridges with the fan base. Just one final thing, if we're looking at the AGM 21st of November, and obviously you guys are going to be helping at the drop-in at Gracie's on Thursday this week, and hopefully anybody that watches this who's a bit confused and wants to get in touch, they can do so by getting in touch with me and I can speak to yourself about that. What do you think is the perfect outcome of where we are just now? Because I know that we're looking at CEO, CFO, chairman in relation to whether or not they should be at the club, and I think that the message is pretty clear. Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't think it'll happen at this AGM. I don't think that they'll all stand up and fall on their swords. I think they should. I think that Peter Lawwell, Michael Nicholson, and in particular, are incapable of changing their attitude towards the fan base. I don't think it's in them. I think they genuinely could not find it in themselves to change their attitude towards the fan base. I think they have to go. I think that's less true because he's been there for a shorter time and has less interaction with the fans of Chris Mackay. I think he probably has to go as well, just because that's a senior position and he's overseeing what we've seen. So for that reason, I think he has to go. I think the non-executive directors, all of him. So I think there's one non-executive director who's less than the 9 years that you should never go beyond one. I think that's right. Guy Rose, is it?
Brian Rose, yeah.
So the rest of them, Sharon Brown hits 9 years now. She'll be 9 years, so she should go as well. They should all go. They should absolutely all go. But they're all up for re-election, so if Dermot Desmond wants them to stay, then I think they'll be staying. And I would like to think that those people would have a right good look at themselves, to be quite honest. Yeah, and maybe that's a vain hope that people would have the level of self, introspection to go and have a right good look at yourself. Do you really think that you're making the contribution that we need for our club, and have a right good think about walking away? And if you don't, and we need to keep calling them out and telling them how poorly they're doing, and maybe that'll convince them that they need to walk away. Maybe we need to make that as uncomfortable for them as possible. Now, the AGM is normally a very stage managed showpiece event. They have the nice wee videos and, all of what they do, all very sort of managed. It's like, and people often refer to it as like the Central Committee of the Soviet Communist Party or something. It's just everybody sits there, and the only time it's been disrupted, I suppose, has been around the context of debates around resolutions that the Celtic Trust puts, and I think we've done that very well. And I'm quite proud of the fact that we've made that AGM effective, at least insofar as they get to hear what we've got to say and they're made to listen. Now, this year, I think, is the most important AGM that I will have ever been involved in, assuming that I get there in the end. But I think that it's really important for as many people as possible to come to that AGM. Now, it's on a Friday morning, so if you're at your work, then, unfortunately, that you're not going to be able to make it. If anybody can get time off work or are no working or can do whatever they can and can get to that AGM. Now, how you would do that is either you are a shareholder, in which case you'll have an invitation, or you know somebody who's a shareholder who can proxy you to attend and speak on their behalf. And there are ways that we can do that, and we can facilitate that for people. So if any of your listeners really wants to come to this AGM, I'm fairly certain we can make that happen.
Yeah.
Because you can proxy votes, and that's what we will do. And if people want to turn up on Thursday and tell us that that's what they want to do, then we'll just take their details and get it sorted. We need as many people as possible. It can't just be the same old, same old. No disrespect to people who go regular AGMs. They're absolutely entitled to be there. And I have been to many in the past myself. But we need people there. People need to see that, and they need to see us. So they can hide behind the doors of the boardroom. They can sit in their heated seats. They can do all these things. And they can hide for us to a very large extent, but they can't hide for us at an AGM. They cannot hide from us. So people need to be there, and they need to be telling them what we think about them. So the two resolutions that will go forward that were requisitioned by shareholders, one of which says, whoever is the board, whoever runs this company has to have a proper set out strategic plan communicated properly to fans and shareholders, which sets out exactly their ambitions and how they propose to achieve those ambitions, and to have, points where we assess how far their progress, and remuneration should be based on the extent to which they make that progress. I don't think this is no out of the Communist Manifesto. This is corporate governance. This is good business practice, in my opinion. I mean, as far as I'm aware, that's what a good, well-run company should be doing. So that says that, whoever is the board. And then the second resolution said, this current board is incapable and we really have no confidence in them, and the Neds should just walk away. They should just walk away. And we think they should.
Yeah. I'll tell you something, what I've seen since, attending these meetings, Jeanette, is the amount of time and effort that people put into it is quite incredible. I don't think I appreciated that prior to this. I mean, as you say, even just the group, it's every day, every single day, they're working on making these changes, not through ego, not through trying to put their name above anybody else's, just because these people want the best for Celtic. So hopefully we can put that out there. We can help with the attendance this week at the drop-in, and we can help anybody who wants to attend the AGM, but keep up the hard work and the great work that you're doing, Jeanette.
Thank you.
And thanks for...
but if everybody can get involved, then it's less work. And
yeah.
But thanks for anything you can do, and thanks for the stuff you have done.
No, thanks for joining us again.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks again for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind. Come back next Friday at 6 o'clock for This is Acsom.